Disneyland is your land.
Ye come seek an adventure at the old pirates, eh?
Make the jump to light speed.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go!
Welcome to the Disneyland Beat, where our toes tap to a Disneyland drum.
And we always whistle while we work.
Hi, I'm Amy.
And I'm TC. Trains and theme parks are a perfect match. At Disneyland, real steam locomotives pull open-air passenger coaches around the perimeter of the park, complete with a trip into the world of dinosaurs. At Knott's Berry Farm, guests enjoy rides in historical coaches, often pulled by the restored Old 41 locomotive built in 1881.
And trains have often been on the minds of the Imagineers. Walt Disney was a huge fan himself, and so were many of his lead animators, a tradition that continues today.
When looking through the past and the present of Disneyland attractions recently, we were a bit surprised to be able to find 12 different railroads at the resort. Let's take a look.
Before we do, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe if you're new. We're trying to grow our channel as much as possible in 2023, and we really appreciate your help and support in doing that. Please share us and turn on notifications so you can catch all of our new videos.
Okay, let's hit the rails.
The first and most obvious is the Disneyland Railroad, which opened as the Santa Fe and Disneyland Railroad, reflecting its sponsor at the time.
The Disneyland Railroad is a narrow gauge railroad with a track width of 3 feet. This size is something that was and had been in use throughout railroad history, but usually as a private industry line rather than long-haul passengers or freight.
The railroad was the first operational ride at Disneyland and circles the park on a 12-foot earthen berm or 1.2-mile-long track. It has 5 different locomotives that can be used on a busy day and 4 different stations to make stops at.
The locomotives are working steam engines that heat water to operate. The trains have to stop periodically at the New Orleans Square station to refill. The oilers burn biodiesel for fuel, which is a heck of a lot cleaner than the old coal-fed steamers.
The Disneyland Railroad is an iconic line with a grand and rich history completely intertwined with both Disneyland and its founder, Walt Disney.
In Fantasyland, you'll find the Casey Jr. Circus train, the little engine that could. It jumped right off the animated screen of Dumbo and into Disneyland as an opening day attraction. Famously, the ride got a bit tippy on its big hill on opening day, and it had to be closed to make it a bit more safe before reopening a couple weeks later.
The 2 identical trains are very decorative for this attraction, and many of the adornments are taken from the original carousel, also found in Fantasyland.
The tracks are 2-foot narrow gauge, a size widely used for amusement rides, and it is powered by a diesel internal combustion engine, which sits behind the driver in the Calliope section. Driving this train is not meant for the very tall.
The train takes a delightful journey around the Storybook Land miniatures and relives the little engine that could's moment as it climbs the large hill. In fact, the train utilizes a chain lift to help it make the grade. I thought it could.
The Rainbow Caverns mine train opened in 1956 in Frontierland. In the spirit of Jungle Cruise, they created the Living Desert. Guests boarded a miniature train and were transported through the various scenes of the desert environment, which featured anthropomorphic cacti, the balancing rocks which precariously rolled back and forth above the guests, and the beautiful Rainbow Caverns.
The Living Desert was also host to other attractions like the Conestoga wagons, stagecoaches, and pack mules. This attraction ran until 1960.
It was a little bit between the previous 2 lines we've been talking about, with a 2.5-foot wide gauge track. There were 4 trains being pulled by brass-rimmed internal combustion engine locomotives.
In 1960, the Living Desert was made over, or more accurately extended, into the Mine Train Through Nature's Wonderland. Imagineer Mark Davis infused a lot of humor into the attraction and designed the town of Rainbow Ridge as the starting point of all the adventures to be.
Taking inspiration from Disney's televised True Life Adventure series, the train traveled through Cascade Peak, Bear Country, Beaver Valley, the Living Desert, Devil's Paint Pots, and Rainbow Caverns before returning to the station.
According to a 1960 article, it also had the best fireworks view in the park. Here's a secret that not many people know. If you board the mine train around 8:50 p.m., the train will stop on a hillside above the Living Desert. You'll be treated to the best view of the fireworks anywhere in the park. Each pyrotechnic burst in the sky illuminates the otherwise almost dark Living Desert. No crowds and no noise except for the sound effects from the Living Desert and the explosions in the sky.
The mine train through Nature's Wonderland operated until January 2nd, 1977. In its final years, the attraction had been demoted from an E-ticket to a D-ticket attraction. The time had come to replace the venerable mine train with a different kind of mine train.
The backstory of Big Thunder Mountain tells of an overnight prosperous mining town that was hit by an earthquake, causing folks to leave the town. However, the mining trains set up to remove the valuable ore from the cursed mountains began to run themselves, racing around the mountains. Big Thunder Mountain Railroad was set up to allow passengers a thrill ride on the possessed trains.
Big Thunder Mountain Railroad is not a train in the traditional sense, but the theming of the ride is very convincing, and throughout the experience you are surrounded by the sights, sounds, and even the smells of the railroad.
Big Thunder, which opened in 1979, is a tubular steel roller coaster that moves via 3 chain lifts and, in a few places around the loading area, magnetic induction. It was one of the first coasters built by Disney to use computer-aided design in the creation of its path, which is often credited for its extremely smooth ride.
A scaled-down western town sits adjacent to the queuing lines. This is the village of Rainbow Ridge, which used to overlook the loading platform of the sedate mine train through nature's Wonderland. Many of the animal animatronics throughout the attraction are from the previous attraction. The name of the ride itself, Big Thunder, was originally the name of a large waterfall the old mine train passed on its tour. Little Thunder is the waterfall seen in town today.
The job of building the monorail was originally assigned to the Standard Carriage Works of East Los Angeles, but in late 1958, Walt Disney, pressured for time, moved it to his Burbank studios. Disney designer Bob Gurr then headed a Disney team that designed and manufactured the cars, chassis, suspension, and propulsion systems. Gurr and Disney were assisted by Allweg, the German company that pioneered straddle beam monorails.
The monorail track is called the Beamway, and it runs around the park, passing by as many attractions as possible, so its passengers can see them and so it can be seen from the ground. It adds in so much kinetic energy to both parks.
All monorails are equipped with Grover 1056 two-chime air horns that sound at various spots as the monorail passes by or when birds land on the track. This horn is one of the most recognizable sounds in all of Disneyland.
The Disneyland Monorail originally completed a short circuit within Tomorrowland, but it has been modified and extended many times over the years, and it now passes through Disneyland, DCA, and Downtown Disney, transporting you into and out of the parks.
This next one is a bit of a stretch, but it does illustrate Disneyland's and Walt Disney's fascination with the railroad. Inside the classic Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, one of the most exciting moments is your driving accident with a large steam engine.
The often copied prop simulates a train coming right at you, and right when it looks like you're going to hit it, it passes over you.
This is a direct reference to the story of J. Thaddeus Toad's escape from prison, taken directly from the Kenneth Grahame novel, where Toad gets into a great locomotive chase, tricking an engineer into running from the police.
The Wind in the Willows, the book this all comes from, was written in 1908, when steam engines dominated transportation throughout Great Britain, the location of our story. And author Kenneth Grahame was such a huge fan of the railroad, he penned another book called The Romance of the Rail.
Another surprising rail reference is found in Galaxy's Edge on the Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run ride of all places.
Tasked with stealing containers of coaxium by Hondo Ohnaka, you spend much of the ride following and disabling a suspended train.
In fact, this suspended train looks an awful lot like a suspended monorail that was developed in the 1960s by Disneyland Imagineers but never came into fruition.
We wonder if the train in this new Star Wars ride is an homage to this creative design, and it also shows that the love affair with the rail continues on at Disneyland.
Disney California Adventure had a train too. It's the California Zephyr. This sleek, streamlined beauty represented a different era. In fact, there is still a California Zephyr line in existence today that stretches from Chicago to Oakland, California.
Though the train didn't move, it did sit on tracks, and it was the locomotive and 2 train cars from an actual full-size working train. The F7 AU Class GFA 17A locomotive was originally built in 1952 by General Motors Diesel, and it spent most of its service in the Canadian Rail Line before being salvaged by Disney Imagineers in the 1990s.
The train and 2 cars were painstakingly restored and set up as one of the only historically representational areas in all of the original version of DCA. There were steel beams and a tower similar to the rail station in central San Diego. Each stationary car served as the entrance to a different shop. The locomotive was the entrance to the Burbank ice cream. Behind it, the silver platter dining car was the entrance to Bakersfield Bakery. At the rear of the train, the silver Crescent Vista Dome observation car was the side entrance to Engineers Toys.
There was a lot of railroad theming around the area, including several artifacts on display and miniature railroads. There was even a train-themed show for a while called Chugga Chugga. The California Zephyr was removed when Buena Vista Street was constructed, but the train was donated to the Pacific Railroad Museum in Portola, California.
Billed as the fastest miniature train in the world, the Viewliner opened in Tomorrowland in 1957, running a short circuit, at times right next to the much larger Disneyland Railroad.
The Viewliner Train of Tomorrow ran on a 2-foot 6-inch gauge rail, and it was designed by engineer Bob Gurr to look like the sleek and futuristic Aero train made by General Motors. Gurr achieved this by combining several automobile parts, mainly Oldsmobiles, to create the locomotive. It was even powered by an Oldsmobile V8, and apparently it was operated much like a car is.
2 separate trains were created, one themed after Fantasyland and the other after Tomorrowland, and they did look incredible. Unfortunately, the train was one of the shortest-lived attractions to ever grace Disneyland, only running for about 14 months. The land it was running on was just too valuable for Walt Disney's upcoming plans.
The beloved Viewliner was ultimately replaced by the Monorail, as well as the rest of the 1959 expansion attractions.
One of the most beloved bygone railroads was the tiny one found in A Bug's Land that ran from 2002 until it closed in 2018, Heimlich's Choo Choo.
The Choo Choo train was a slow-moving train with an electric motor, not much more than any small kiddie train you might find in an amusement park around the world.
But this one was Heimlich, and he would take you on a trip around his little jungle forest where he would encounter oversized food to eat as we went.
It was a very cute ride. Toddlers loved it, and you could embarrass your teenager by just enjoying every minute of it.
The newest rail line at Disneyland is the Run-Amuck Railroad, a fantastic railway that operates in the cartoon Run-Amuck Park, which is frequented by Mickey, Minnie, Goofy, and pals, and part of the new attraction Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway.
This is a railway in name for sure, as each of the 5 cars on the train are actually trackless vehicles that have their paths and movement pre-programmed down to the smallest detail.
So it does seem quite the feat of engineering that the locomotive and 4 passenger cars are able to function so well in tandem. When the train pulls into and out of the loading station, it's a very convincing railroad effect. It very much seems like a normal train with everything attached. But soon your cars will split off from each other, taking you on an adventure inside a zany Mickey cartoon.
The trackless cars are all electrically powered and have a surprising amount of oomph, carrying around up to 8 people each.
The Run-Amuck Railroad comes back together into a full train again towards the end of the ride for its final pastoral scene. It's a great combination of classic Disney elements, cartoons of classic characters, trains, and fireworks.
Well, Mouseketeers, we hope you enjoyed this adventure into the railroads of Disneyland. Thanks so much for joining us.
May the light in the firehouse window always shine brightly, and may your dreams always come true.
See you real soon, Mouseketeers.